They framed me as an addict to steal my daughter, but I turned their lies into evidence. My name is Lena Carter, and I never thought the people I trusted most would destroy my life just to feel powerful. I was never the perfect woman, but I was a good mother. The kind who stayed up all night when her daughter had a fever, who skipped dinner so she could afford ballet shoes. My daughter Mia was my reason to breathe. But one winter morning, everything I lived for was taken from me, in front of my eyes. It was a Tuesday, cold, gray, and quiet. I remember standing in the kitchen, folding Mia's little pink sweater, when a knock echoed on the door. Two strangers in dark coats stood outside, holding clipboards and pity in their eyes. Behind them, a police officer avoided my gaze. "Lena Carter?" one of the women said. "We're from Child Protective Services. We need to talk about your daughter, Mia." My heart froze. "What about her?" I asked, my voice trembling. They exchanged a look. "We received reports that you're using substances, that your home isn't safe for your child." I felt my world crack open. "That's not true. Who said that?" But they wouldn't answer. Instead, they stepped inside as if they owned the place. They looked around my small living room, judging every corner, the scattered toys, the laundry on the chair, the unfinished breakfast on the table. To them, it wasn't the home of a struggling single mom. It was evidence. I tried to explain. "You can test me right now. I don't even drink." But they didn't care. One of them whispered to the officer, and before I could breathe, Mia was crying as they took her from my arms. She was only 6. She didn't understand what was happening. "Mommy, where are they taking me?" she screamed, reaching for me. I ran after them, but the officer blocked my way. "Ma'am, please calm down," he said. "Calm down?" I shouted, sobbing. "You're taking my baby!" The door slammed and their car disappeared down the street. That was the moment everything inside me went silent. I collapsed on the floor, clutching the pink sweater, and promised myself one thing. I will get her back. The next few days blurred together. I called CPS again and again, demanding answers. They told me Mia was safe in foster care until the investigation was complete. Investigation? Into what? I begged for a hearing, for a chance to prove I was innocent. Then, a name appeared on the official report. Hannah Carter, my ex-husband's sister, my so-called best friend. She was the one who filed the complaint. She had told the agency I was unstable, that I was using pills and neglecting Mia. I couldn't believe it. Hannah had spent countless evenings in my home sipping tea, pretending to care. She'd seen me cry when my husband left, seen how hard I fought to raise Mia alone. And now she was the one who tore us apart. But why? The answer came 3 days later, in the form of a photo. My neighbor, Mrs. Green, slipped an envelope under my door. Inside was a picture. Hannah smiling at dinner with my ex-husband, Mark. My hands shook as I stared at it. They were together, all along. And suddenly, it made sense. The sudden custody filing, the anonymous complaint, the lies. They wanted full custody. They wanted Mia. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, red-eyed and exhausted. I whispered to myself, "They think I'm broken. They think I'll beg. But I'll make them regret the day they lied about me." I found a lawyer, Rachel Miles, a woman known for taking impossible cases. When I sat in her office, she looked me over, calm but sharp. "They accused you of drug use without evidence?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'll take any test you want. I just want my daughter back." Rachel nodded. "Good, we'll start there. And Lena, we're not just going to defend you. We're going to expose them." For the first time in days, I felt hope flicker. But the court wasn't kind. When my custody hearing finally began, Hannah sat behind Mark, pretending to be the concerned aunt. She had a file full of fake statements, neighbors saying I screamed at Mia, photos of my house taken on my worst days, even fake prescriptions. When the judge looked at me, I saw doubt in his eyes. They were winning. My lawyer whispered, "Stay calm, we'll fight back." And I did. I took the drug test. I gave medical records. I showed proof that I'd been clean my whole life. But truth wasn't enough. Not yet, because Hannah and Mark had a secret, and I was about to uncover it. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You don't deserve what they did to you. Check your mailbox tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long time. Was it a trap, or the first crack in their plan? I didn't know then, but that message would change everything. The next morning, I woke up before the sun rose. I hadn't really slept. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about that mysterious text. Check your mailbox tomorrow. Those words replayed in my head like a drumbeat. When I finally walked outside, the cold air bit at my skin. My heart pounded as I opened the small metal mailbox at the end of my driveway. Inside was a plain brown envelope, no name, no return address. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, each one more shocking than the last. Hannah and Mark together, laughing, holding hands, kissing, all taken over several months. But that wasn't the worst part. There were also pictures of Hannah handing an envelope to a man I recognized, the social worker who came to take Mia. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My knees went weak. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was corruption. They had paid someone to file a false report. I sank to the floor, clutching the photos. "You ruined my life for money and jealousy," I whispered. "But now I have proof." I called Rachel immediately. Within an hour, I was sitting in her office again, spreading the photos across her desk. She studied them quietly, then looked up at me. "This," she said, "changes everything." "Can we use it in court?" I asked, my voice shaking with both fear and excitement. "Absolutely," Rachel said, "but we'll need to be smart. If we rush, they'll claim it's fabricated. We have to verify the photos, times, locations, payments. Then we hit them when they least expect it." Her confidence gave me strength. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim. I was a mother preparing for war. The next few weeks became a blur of quiet investigation. Rachel hired a private investigator named Cole, a sharp, quiet man who didn't waste words. Together, we pieced together the puzzle. He tracked financial records and found that Hannah had transferred large sums of money to a man named David Keller, the same CPS worker who signed the removal order for Mia. Rachel's plan was simple but deadly: gather enough evidence to prove the bribery, then expose them in court. But until then, I had to play their game. I had to act broken, defeated, the way they expected me to be. Mark called me one evening, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Lena, I know this is hard on you," he said. "Maybe it's time to accept that Mia's better off with us." "With you?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You mean with you and Hannah?" He went silent for a moment. Then he laughed softly. "You always were dramatic. You can't even prove we're together." If only he knew. After the call ended, I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because soon, I'd prove everything, in front of the same judge who doubted me. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. "We've got it," she said, excitement in her voice. Cole had found video footage from a nearby restaurant. Hannah and Mark meeting with David Keller. The timestamp matched the day before Mia was taken. The video showed Hannah sliding an envelope across the table. That was the final piece. The night before the hearing, I stood in Mia's empty bedroom. Her little shoes were still by the door, her drawings still taped to the wall. I whispered, "I'm bringing you home, baby. Tomorrow, they'll finally see the truth." The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Hannah sat beside Mark, both acting calm and confident. Their lawyer smiled like he'd already won. I could feel their arrogance from across the room. But this time, I wasn't afraid. Rachel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Let them talk first," she whispered. "Then we'll speak." When Hannah took the stand, she played her role perfectly. Soft-spoken, fake tears, pretending to care. "I just wanted to protect Mia," she said, sniffling. "Lena's been unstable for a long time." My blood boiled, but I stayed silent. Then it was Rachel's turn. She walked to the front with calm authority. "Your Honor," she said, "we have new evidence that changes the entire case." Mark's smirk faded instantly. Rachel projected the restaurant video on the courtroom screen. The room went dead silent as everyone watched Hannah hand the envelope to David Keller. Then she revealed the bank transfer receipts, the time-stamped photos, the text messages Cole had recovered from Keller's phone. The judge's expression hardened. "Ms. Carter," he said to Hannah, "do you deny this evidence?" Hannah's lips trembled. It's not what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," Rachel said coldly. "You paid a government employee to lie and take a child from her mother." The room erupted in whispers. Mark stood up, shouting, This is ridiculous. That video could be fake. Rachel smiled. Funny you say that, Mr. Carter, because the restaurant's security system confirmed its authenticity this morning. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The judge slammed his gavel. Enough. This hearing is adjourned for further investigation, and I suggest both of you, Mr. Carter and Ms. Carter, find legal representation for yourselves. When the session ended, Hannah ran out in tears. Mark followed her, shouting angrily. I just stood there, numb but smiling. Rachel turned to me and said, "It's not over yet, but it's beginning to turn." I nodded. I've waited long enough. Now they'll feel what I felt. That night, I walked home under the quiet streetlights, holding the court papers close to my chest. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I could see victory ahead. They stole my child with lies. Now I would destroy them with truth. After the judge adjourned the hearing, it felt like the air in the courthouse sharpened. Every whisper cut, every glance had weight. For the first time since Mia was taken, I didn't feel like I was running on fumes. I felt like I had a map. Rachel and Cole weren't the kind of team that celebrated early. They were quiet, methodical, and hungry. Over the next 48 hours, they moved like a storm. Cole produced more files. 3 separate bank transfers from Hannah's account to Keller's. The same pattern repeated over months. He'd traced metadata that linked the anonymous tip email to a burner phone Hannah had used. Even more damning, Cole had subpoenaed the restaurant security, footage from an earlier date, footage that showed Hannah meeting with Keller, then slipping into a corner call that matched her private number. When the judge reconvened us, the room was packed tighter than before. If there had been any sympathy left for Hannah and Mark, it drained away under the weight of proof. Ms. Carter, the judge said to Hannah, "We will be bringing criminal contempt charges against the social worker, and your involvement will be investigated. Mr. Carter, you will remain under caution pending inquiries into collusion." Hannah went white. Mark's jaw clicked. They had everything to lose now: reputation, custody, freedom. I watched it unfold with the distant calm of someone who had counted every cost. But what I wanted, more than criminal charges, more than vengeance, was my daughter. The law could punish them, but I needed Mia back in my arms. For that, Rachel suggested a strategic move: a private rights hearing immediately following the criminal inquiry, accompanied by a forensic social worker who could attest to my fitness, plus testimonies from neighbors and teachers who supported me. Time mattered. The agency could be slow. The publicity could make them defensive. We had to be faster and cleaner than their lies. We prepped for days. I reassembled everything: receipts proving stable income, text chains showing my daily care for Mia, photographs of doctor visits, of ballet recitals I never missed. Cole turned up more unexpected witnesses: a barista who'd overheard Hannah's call boasting about getting rid of the obstacle, a contractor who'd seen Hannah and Mark arguing months earlier about saving the house. Small things that, stitched together, made a seam too wide to ignore. On the morning of the rights hearing, I woke at dawn. The apartment felt both too small and impossibly full of memory. Mia's crayon drawings taped to the fridge, her tiny bowls still in the cabinet. I kissed the empty pillow and left for the courthouse with my hands steady, my jaw set. We walked in, and the room hummed with a different energy. This time, the judge wasn't just listening to law, she was listening for truth. She called Keller first. The man who had signed the removal order tried to stand his ground, but Cole had already obtained his phone logs. Under oath, Keller's story frayed. He'd been paid. The payment trail was clear. He confessed to taking the report in exchange for the money, an act of desperation, for his own debts. The judge's face hardened, and I felt something like vindication burn warm in my chest. Then came Hannah. Rachel's cross-examination was surgical, calm, precise. "Ms. Carter," Rachel said, her voice soft but unrelenting, "did you pay anyone to lie about your fitness as a mother?" Hannah's lips trembled. "No," she whispered. "Did you transfer money to David Keller around the time of Mia's removal?" Silence stretched. Then Hannah's eyes darted to Mark and back to the judge. She opened her mouth, closed it, and finally, in a voice that broke like old plaster, she said, I was angry. I wanted custody. We thought if we could prove negligence." "You bribed a public official," Rachel finished. The words landed heavy. Hannah began to sob, but the judge did not flinch. "Ms. Carter, your actions have endangered a child's well-being and abused the system designed to protect children. This court cannot ignore that." There it was, the wait I'd waited for. The judge ordered immediate supervised visitation. Not enough to reunite us, but it was a crack in the wall. It was legal acknowledgement that Mia's removal had been tainted. She sent a transcript to the prosecutor to pursue criminal charges against Hannah and Keller, and she scheduled an expedited review for full custody pending the results. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed. Reporters circled like sharks, but I moved through them like I moved through wind, focused. A photographer from the local paper asked for a statement. I swallowed. They stole my baby with lies and paid someone to do it. That's what this is about. My voice did not shake. Within 24 hours, the story went national. The headline was blunt. Mother accuses family collusion in child. Removal. The comments section exploded with support, outrage, 1,000 strangers' empathy, but there were also the inevitable barbs, people who judged before they knew. One anonymous blog tried to paint me as volatile. Rachel shut it down within hours with a cease and desist and a threat of libel. We fought on every front, legal, social, public opinion, because abusers often try to survive by twisting the narrative. We refused to let them. Meanwhile, Mark lashed out. He sent a barrage of texts, threatening lawsuits, promising to ruin me for making his family look bad. He called my workplace, demanded I be fired. He tried to intimidate people who dared speak favorably of me. But every attempt only drew more scrutiny onto him. People who'd once nodded politely at his parties now avoided his calls. Business contacts distanced themselves. It was an old pattern. Power retreats when the light gets bright. On the third day of the media storm, I received a call from the social worker assigned to Mia's case, a woman named Teresa, who had read the court transcript and wanted to help. Her voice was kind, and perhaps for the first time, administrative compassion felt real. Lena, she said, we're arranging for a temporary reunification assessment. If you pass, we'll expedite the custody transfer. I stared at the ceiling, then at the framed photo of me and Mia on the mantle. The fight wasn't finished. There would be appeals, whispers, attempts to discredit. There would be moments I wanted to give up. But there was also the little image of Mia's grin when she learned ballet steps. There was the sound of her singing in the shower. There was the memory of her tiny hand in mine when she'd fallen and scraped her knee. That night, alone in my kitchen, I printed out the judge's order and taped it to the fridge. Under it, I wrote in big letters, "Bring her home." And I slept for the first time in weeks with something I hadn't had since the day Mia disappeared: hope. The next morning, as dawn leached through the blinds, my phone chimed with an unfamiliar number. It was a video message, anonymous. I opened it with caution. On the screen, a shaky handheld recording. Hannah, her face pale, whispering into the phone. "We did it for Michael. We needed the house." Her voice trailed, and then someone's hand snatched the camera away. Cole's number flashed on my screen. "We've got more," his text read. "Meet me tomorrow. Bring the files." I closed the laptop, exhaled, and whispered into the quiet kitchen. "Then we finish it." Because this time it wouldn't just be legal justice, this time it would be final. Cole met me at a quiet diner the next morning, a battered manila envelope tucked under his arm like a loaded promise. He slid it across the table and didn't say a word until I opened it. Inside were bank records, timestamps, a new grainy video. Hannah and Mark in Mark's car, arguing about what to do if Lena fights back. And then the clincher, a recorded voicemail from David Keller pleading, "They paid me, but if this goes public, they'll deny it." I felt nothing for a moment but a cold, clean clarity. This was everything Rachel needed. This was everything I had prayed for in the dark nights when I imagined Mia's small hands slipping away forever. We moved fast. Rachel filed an emergency, motion to expedite custody based on the new evidence of bribery and collusion. The prosecutor filed criminal charges against Keller and a coordinated complaint against Hannah and Mark for fraud, conspiracy, and endangering a child. The judge scheduled a follow-up hearing within days in the extraordinary fast track that only happened when evidence was undeniable and a child's welfare hung in the balance. On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse hummed with tense anticipation. Cameras from 3 networks lined the sidewalk, but I walked past them like a woman going to war whose only objective was a single, perfect outcome: my daughter back in my arms. Rachel laid out the case methodically. She presented the bank transfers, the voicemail, Keller's confession, The restaurant footage, the text messages. She brought in Teresa, the social worker who had recommended the reunification assessment, to testify about my parenting during visits. Punctual, loving, engaged, attentive. Neighbors came with statements about my stable routines and how I'd never once missed a PTA meeting. Even teachers spoke of me as good performance and how present I'd always been at school events. When Keller was called, his shoulders sagged. He confirmed he had been paid. His voice was small when he explained his debts and how he'd taken the money to cover them. I didn't think it would go this far, he said. I thought I was helping. His confession echoed in the room like a bell. Hannah tried to maintain composure, but under cross-examination, she began to unravel. Rachel produced a string of incriminating texts in which she and Mark celebrated that the obstacle was gone when pressed about motive, the mortgage, the investments, the desperation. Hannah's voice finally broke. Mark, who had tried to look stoic for cameras, now looked around the courtroom with the hollowed-out expression of someone seeing consequences for the first time. The judge didn't drag it out. She spoke plainly. This court's primary concern is the safety and welfare of the child. The evidence presented demonstrates a coordinated effort to remove that child from her lawful custodian by means we cannot ignore. She ordered immediate temporary custody be returned to me, pending the criminal trials and an expedited family evaluation. Then she added, looking directly at Hannah and Mark, I also order that no unsupervised contact occur between the parents and the child until further notice. When the bailiff escorted the toddler's foster care worker into the room, my legs felt weak in the best kind of way. The woman in the plain jacket smiled and carried a small bundle. Mia clutched a worn teddy bear, her hair in two mismatched braids. When she saw me, her face lit up like someone opening a window after months of winter. "Mama!" she cried, and the sound undid whatever tightness was left in my chest. I walked to her, careful and steady, and lifted her into my arms. Her smell, soap and crayons, and a faint whiff of syrup, wrapped around me like an anchor. I kissed her head until I couldn't stop. The courtroom, the cameras, the whispers. They all dissolved into a single, simple truth: she was mine. Outside, the press stormed us again. But this time their questions were distant noise. Rachel guided us to the car, and Cole followed with the sealed evidence folders. We drove home in a silent convoy, Mia asleep on my shoulder in the back seat. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight in my chest. The prosecutions moved swiftly after that. Keller entered a plea for cooperation and testified against Hannah and Mark in exchange for a reduced sentence. The criminal investigations revealed a pattern. Not only payments to Keller, but also forged documents, manipulated school reports, and false allegations suggested to neighbors to create a manufactured narrative of neglect. Hannah and Mark were arrested and charged with fraud, conspiracy, and endangerment. News cycles that had once doubted me now called it a scandal that exposed how easily a system designed to protect children could be corrupted. People reached out afterward, messages from strangers who'd followed the story, from friends who'd quietly supported me, from other parents who shared their fears. But the most powerful moment came later that evening, when I tucked Mia into her own bed for the first time in what felt like forever. Her small hand found mine under the blanket. She whispered, "Mama, did we win?" I smiled until my face hurt. "Yes, baby," I said. "We won. We're home." But victory came with a heavy clarity. Hannah's confession and Mark's arrest didn't erase the months of fear nor the places where trust had been hollowed out. I started therapy, not because I was weak, but because I wanted to become whole for Mia. I spoke out at town meetings about the abuses we'd uncovered, about how money can buy influence and wreck lives, and about how the system needed stronger safeguards to prevent a similar nightmare from happening to others. I also learned to forgive, which was less about them and more about me. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant unclenching the part of my heart that had been tethered to their judgment. I forgave because I wanted to stop letting their actions dictate my happiness. It was a quiet practice, a breath, a step, a decision to choose joy in small things. The way Mia hummed while she drew, the ridiculous bedtime rituals we invented, the way sunlight poured through our kitchen on lazy Sundays. Months later, at a community event aimed at protecting children's rights, a woman approached me with moist eyes. "You gave me courage to fight," she said, clutching my hand. In that moment, I saw the ripple of what had started in my small kitchen when someone dropped those photos in my mailbox. What I had thought would just be a fight to get my child back had become something larger. An expose, a reform, a movement. There are scars that never fully fade, and memories I'll carry forever. But Mia's laughter at the breakfast table became the soundtrack of my new life. One rebuilt not around revenge, but around reclamation. The final judgments in court closed some chapters. The rest I closed by living, by showing up, by proving that truth, however late, can prevail. When people ask if I would do it again, out of the pain, the endless hearings, the nights of fear, I don't hesitate. Yes, I tell them, I would, for her. 6 months after getting Mia back, life had almost settled into something like peace. The nightmares were fading, replaced by the steady rhythm of mornings with pancakes, laughter, and bedtime stories. But deep inside me, there was still an unfinished chapter, the final reckoning with those who had tried to break me. The trial of Hannah and Mark began on a warm spring morning. The courthouse was packed again, reporters elbowing for position, flashbulbs bursting as we walked in. This time, I didn't feel fear. I felt power. I wasn't the woman who had once begged for justice. I was the woman who had made it happen. Rachel sat beside me, calm as always, a quiet confidence in her eyes. Cole was behind us, his notebook ready. Across the courtroom, Hannah avoided my gaze, her face pale under the bright lights. Mark, dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't hide the weight loss and sleepless nights, glanced at me once, a flicker of guilt, maybe fear. The prosecution presented their case like a blade, sharp, deliberate, merciless. Keller took the stand first, trembling but clear. He admitted to everything: the bribe, the fabricated evidence, the false report. He described how Hannah and Mark had approached him with a deal to protect Mia, but their true intent had been to destroy me. When Hannah's turn came, she tried to cry. She said she had only wanted to protect her niece, that she believed I was unfit. But her performance cracked when the prosecutor played an audio file, a recording of her laughing with Mark about how I'd never see that brat again. Gasps filled the courtroom. Even Mark's attorney couldn't hide his disgust. Mark took the stand next, and the truth spilled out like poison. He admitted the affair, the financial collapse, the desperation to keep up appearances. He said Hannah had pushed him, manipulated him, convinced him that I'd never forgive him, so it was better to take everything before she did. When the prosecutor asked if he regretted it, Mark's voice broke. "Every day," he said softly. "But it's too late now." The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, defamation, and child endangerment. Hannah was sentenced to 15 years. Mark received 12. Keller, who had cooperated, got 2 with probation. As they were led away, Hannah finally looked at me. Her eyes were wild, full of rage and disbelief. I met her stare, unflinching. There was nothing left to say. She had stolen months of my life, tried to destroy everything that made me a mother. But I was still standing, and she was not. After the sentencing, the courthouse steps filled with cameras again. This time, I didn't hide. I stood before them, Mia's hand in mine, and said only one thing. They tried to silence me, instead they made me louder. That line became the headline the next morning, splashed across every news outlet, repeated in interviews printed on the front page of magazines. I was no longer a victim. I was a voice. Over the next few weeks, donations and letters poured in. Parents shared their stories of corruption and false accusations. Organizations invited me to speak at panels about child welfare reform. I wasn't a politician, but I knew what needed to change. Stricter oversight for private investigators, protection for single parents, better accountability within family court systems. Rachel helped me draft proposals. Cole helped me publish articles under a new column titled Justice in the Shadows. The stories went viral, and soon lawmakers began citing our work. It was surreal, to go from being branded an unfit mother to being the catalyst for real change. But my favorite moments weren't the interviews or the headlines. They were the quiet ones. Teaching Mia how to ride her bike, hearing her laughter echo in the park, watching her fall asleep safe and loved. One evening, months after the sentencing, I received a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Mark. Inside was a single page. Lena, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I finally understand what you meant about truth. It doesn't hide forever. Tell Mia I'm sorry. Not as her father, but as a man who failed to be one. Mark. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box. The same box where I'd kept the photos, the evidence, the nightmares, and then I closed it for good. The next morning, Mia woke early. Mama, can we go to the beach today? She asked, her eyes shining. Sure, I said, smiling. Let's make it a long day. We drove out to the coast, the sun just beginning to rise. The sky turned gold and pink, the waves soft and steady. I stood there with my feet in the surf, holding Mia's small hand, watching the horizon stretch endlessly.
She pointed at the ocean. Is that where the bad dreams go, Mama? I looked out at the water. Endless, cleansing, full of promise. Yes, baby, I said quietly. That's exactly where they go. As she ran ahead, chasing seagulls and laughter, I whispered the words that had carried me through everything. They took my child away, but they never took me. And that's how it ended, not with revenge, but with redemption. Not with a scream, but with peace. Because in the end, justice isn't just what the court declares. It's what a mother rebuilds when the world tries to take everything away.